want to say good morning to everyone. My now good friend, since he called me doctor. Since he called me doctor, thank you so very much. Not there yet, but we'll speak those things as though they were.
Yes,
And then speak them into existence. I am truly grateful to be here today. This is my alma mater. As was said, I graduated in 1991. That's not that far off now. Some of y'all looking at me like I'm old. I'm not old, just seasoned. But I am truly grateful to be here. I'm not sure what you came to hear today. I'm not sure if what I will say to you will be of any value at all. But just by your presence here today suggests to me that this subject matter that we are addressing is of importance to you. And I'm grateful to see all of you here today as evidence that this is something very close and dear to your heart. We know that society as we know it cannot operate, it cannot function, it cannot be as it is supposed to be without individuals like yourselves making it so and making a conscious effort to make it so. And so I'm grateful for you being here today. I just want to acknowledge a couple of people before I go any further. Dr. Manuel is someone that I have come to revere very, very much. He and I had the opportunity over the reunion weekend to kind of visit a little bit, and I was just humbled by the stature of this man. And so I want to acknowledge Dr. Manuel for even being here today. It was a recommendation from him to the Diversity and Inclusion Group to reach out to me as a possible speaker for this event. And so, Dr. Brown, thank you so much. Also, I have my family here today sitting on the front row down here. I grew up in a close-knit family. Even our cousins were like sisters and brothers. And they are here today. And I want to acknowledge you all. Thank you for being here. And Miss Gwen, you are like a family as well. You know that. So I want to acknowledge them. And my wife, Patty, who has got the selfie stick out and trying to capture some of this on video. And of course my son, who has his tablet out, and I hope you're listening. And to a very long time friend who is responsible for me going into the ministry more or less. That's Miss Dina Young, sitting right here. I attended Pitts Chapel United Methodist Church just a block and a half down the street. And then for a while, I left and attended High Street Baptist Church under the Ray and Dina Young teen ministry at High Street. And it was there that I gave my life to the Lord. And so Dina is very dear to my heart, and she's here today as well. Let's welcome her. I know that the hour is at hand and we need to move forward, but there's just three people that I just want to mention their names. These are people that came at the request of my sister, who took a personal day from work to be here. And I guess they did too. But they're here today. And Alexis Brown, Kayla, Cotty, and Brenda Tunstall are here from Jordan Valley. And I want to, are you right here? Thank you so much for coming. I don't know if many of you know this hero that has been around the Drury University for a number of years. His name is Dan Cashel. He has been a big-time friend and supporter all through my college years while here playing basketball. And he walked in today and handed me this. Pictures of me playing basketball while here at Drury. And I want to show some of the, any basketball players here? There's a few back there. Okay, yeah. You see this right here when we're dunking it? That's in the game too. You see the crowd there? Oh yeah, one more thing he wanted me to, he highlighted this, I didn't do it. I'm telling you, it wasn't me. And All-American, 1991. That's me, yeah. So let me just get down to business of a couple of things that I want to share with you today. I grew up here in Springfield. I attended Central High School right across the street. Graduated from there in 1987. And all of my time, I lived on the north side of the city. The north side of Springfield when I was growing up, was considered the black side of the city. That's where the largest concentration of African American people reside. Either right in Central City, still considered north, or farther north where Hillcrest High School was. Parkview was sort of the school that was in the middle. They had a mixture of some African Americans, but not a whole lot. And the further south you went, the less you saw of African Americans. As you know, being that there was a larger concentration of African Americans in the north part of the city, it just seemed that way, maybe it wasn't, that there was also a larger concentration of law enforcement presence on the north side of the city. And while Central High School was and is the greatest school in the city, at that time, we were the smallest in terms of enrollment. We were still class 4A, but we were the smallest in terms of enrollment. And at one time, long after I graduated even from college, there was the threat that Central High School should be closed. And what a shame that would have been if that would have happened. There were people who were alumni and who had loved having that school in the community that really fought and got behind that effort to keep the school open. And one of those people was Greg Darnaby, who has now retired as one of the principals at Central High School. And before he left, Central High School, as you may or may not know, has now become, I think, again, the #1 school in the city. It has an IB program, and people from all over the city, even on the south side, are trying to get to the north side to attend Central High School. And so I'm very grateful for that. But that's just a little bit about me. I am now living in Kansas City. I've been in Kansas City since 1997. And one of the hot buttons in the news and in the topics today is that all of these police shootings, police-involved shootings. And I don't know if you know it, but already in 2016, there have been 26 police-involved shootings. Already in 2016, there have been 26 law enforcement involved shootings. I'm not getting into the debate of whether or not they were justifiable. I'm just raising your awareness to that fact. Already, this year, we've had 26 police-involved shootings. This issue of diversity and race and inclusion, economic dignity, is so vast that the time I have this morning would not do it justice. So I'm just going to share with you just a couple of things, and then if y'all want me to come back and say some more, I will. How's that? A good friend of mine by the name of Dr. Emmanuel Gumsey from Cameroon is an educator in Kansas City. And he's written a book that's entitled Shocking Cultures, Hilarious, Disastrous Challenges of Foreign Workers. And there's some things that he has in this book that I wanted to lift up kind of as a thought for us to have this morning. He writes in his book, the first day of his teaching experience in the United States, he had been sent to an elementary school called Franklin Elementary in the urban part of the city of Kansas City, Missouri. That day, things went better than he had been told they would. In fact, he had been told he would have a classroom full of a bunch of bad children. But that day went better than he had anticipated. On that day, all the students gathered together, pretty much like this in an auditorium, and teachers and faculty were also there, and they sung a song called Lift Every Voice and Sing, written by James Weldon Johnson and composed by his brother John Johnson in 1921. On that first day of class, Mr. Gumsey, Dr. Gumsey, had 23 students, of which all of them were black students with the exception of 2. One was biracial and one was white. 23 students, all of them African American with the exception of 2, one biracial and the other one was white. As is normal for teachers on the first day, they took some time to get to know one another, to get acquainted with each other. But Dr. Gumsey noticed as he was talking about himself and being from Cameroon, the students started paying attention to him. And it seems like they were really wanting to know more about where he was from than about him. And so as he began to dialogue with the students, what he found out was something interesting. All of their questions were based on what they saw on television, what was demonstrated in their homes or their communities, and the lack of knowledge that they had of the continent of Africa. One student even asked him, "How can you speak French?" I forgot to tell y'all that this was a French class, 3rd grade French class. One of the students even asked him, "How can you speak French if you're from Africa? Black people don't speak French." And in his book, he writes how surprised by that comment he was. How could this young student imagine that people from Africa, or black people in general, did not speak French? The only explanation he could find is that the other students had not met a black person who spoke French. This justification was confirmed by the fact that he was the first African American teacher at that school, and certainly the first African American who they knew that spoke French. All of his current and previous colleagues had been white. Dr. Gumsey goes on in his book to talk about how this one student raised his hand. This is kind of funny, y'all. This one student raised his hand and said, "I have to go." You have to understand, Dr. Gumsey's from Cameroon. "I have to go" means what? To him. And so he said, "Excuse me?" And the student said, I need to go. And he looking around, where do you need to go? So the third time the student says, I need to, I want to, I have to. And Dr. Gumpsey's bringing him pieces of paper and crayons. He didn't know what he needed. Finally, the little boy says, I have to do number 2. Dr. Gumpsey brings him a number 2 pencil. Finally, the student, in his frustration, just races out of the room. And one of the young girls in the classroom said, you should have just let him go. And he's still bewildered, not knowing what needing to go meant. A few minutes later, the student comes back and he's like, I made it. And it wasn't until then that Dr. Gumpsey understood I have to go means I need to go to the bathroom. What I'm trying to illustrate to you is how cultural diversity is so vast and wide. Someone from another country didn't understand what we seem to all understand in this room, what the child was trying to communicate. And so this subject of diversity is so very important if we want to truly understand one another. And truly understanding one another means that we have to overcome our fears. We have to overcome our stereotypes. We have to overcome our generalizations. We have to overcome all of these things that sometimes put up a wall between us getting to know someone for who they are. Not for what they do, not for what kind of education they have, not for what kind of car they drive, what kind of bank account they have, or what kind of house they live in, but who they are as an individual. That's really what I want to say to you today. There are barriers in place, and sometimes those barriers are not barriers that we put up. They're barriers that the other person put up. Sometimes they're barriers that society has put up. Nonetheless, they exist. And if we want to get past it, if we want to make our communities better, we have to make sure that we are not fearful of challenging those barriers. I want to stop right here and just acknowledge my friend who is sitting in the room, and that is Mr. D. Wampler. He's ducking back there now. But I have to tell you this story just real quickly. Mr. Wampler was one of the boosters while I was here at Drury. And he did something for me that I was unable to do for myself, that my family could not do. And I told him I would never be able to pay him back. And he said, don't worry about it. Just go be successful and do something with your life. Amen. These are the kind of people that I had in my life and that poured into my personhood. I would cut class sometimes to go watch him rip people up in the courtroom. But that was one of my heroes, and he is one of my heroes. And I often quote his book entitled The Myth of the Separation of Church and State. It's a good book. You need to get it. And he's got a new book out, too, that I'm going to get, hopefully, before he leaves today. And so these types of things, when it comes to diversity, I think are so very important for us to really understand and not be so afraid of. I was walking down the sidewalk today, and as many people as I could who made eye contact with me, I spoke to them. Most people passed me. Wouldn't make eye contact. But those who did, and maybe there were some of you, I said, hello, good morning. And some people spoke and some people didn't. That's okay. It's about making our community better. And Dr. Gumpsey said in his book, for a teacher coming to the United States and teaching for the first time a foreign language like French, he learned so much from his students, and he learned so much about diversity that he had to put it in writing. There's another story that I'd like to tell you, but I don't have time. Culture sometimes has been defined as consisting of beliefs, behaviors, objects, and other characteristics common to the members of a particular group or society. Through culture, people define themselves, conform to society's shared values, and contribute to society. Cultural diversity is a form of appreciating the differences in individuals. Those differences can be based on gender, age, sex, ethnicity, sexual orientation, social status, and so much more. That's why I said I don't have time to really talk about it, because it's so vast to really discuss this matter of diversity. So while the gospel of diversity, as I call it, is being preached in press conferences and public forums and public settings such as this, corporate workshops and seminars across the country, little attention is paid to the conflicting values and faulty assumptions implicit in this discussion. First is the assumption that diversity is only about race, gender, and or national origin. The majority pitfall into which many of us well-intentioned diversity speakers or consultants fall into the category of people on the basis of ethnicity or gender, and then proceeding to perpetuate stereotypes by outlining, here's how to communicate with Asians. Here's how to motivate Native Americans. This is how to give feedback to Hispanics. Women need to be treated like this. African Americans should be coached like that, and so on. The assumption is that all people in a given racial or gender group are alike, and the fact is they are not. You and I may be of the same race, but we are as different as if we were of different races. And we often, in talking about diversity, loop everything into one group or category. And I want to dispel that today. There are many differences within groups as there are between groups. Diversity is not just a matter of race or gender, it's about human uniqueness in all aspects. Values, education, thinking patterns, lifestyle, sexuality, self-expression, personality, work styles, communication preferences, learning styles, family history, life experiences, socioeconomic status, political values, spiritual practice, and the list goes on. Are y'all hearing what I'm saying? It is a multifaceted, multi-layered thing when you talk about diversity and even race. To lump groups of people into broad categories based solely on race and gender is simplistic and superficial, and it does a disservice to true human diversity. It's awfully quiet in the room. Another assertion I'd like to make often is made when we need diverse people. Let me give you an example. Employees are needed for diverse customers. And so the assumption here is that only likes can sell to likes. I don't know if y'all got that. For instance, only Hispanics can relate to other Hispanics. It takes an Asian to know what an Asian wants. It must be a woman to sell woman's clothes. Do you see the danger in that? It is all too easy to slip into another form of stereotyping and discrimination that says women make the best gynecologists. Come on. Only Japanese can sell goods and services to other Japanese. Only African American journalists can write about problems in the African American community. White audiences will never relate to Hispanic movies. Only Koreans can market products to other Koreans. White authors can never write black screenplays. Gerontologists have to be old. Just as salespeople who are often assigned their sales territories according to their own race or gender and are unable to break out of the assumptions that their bosses place them in, we can't send a salesperson, for example, out of a different ethnicity to call on the customer because the customer would complain. That's sad. This mindset keeps us in our own self-made prisons, where we don't have the unique opportunity to meet individuals for who they are. You cannot love me if you have never taken the time to get to know me. And as long as this deeply ingrained mentality continues to exist, we will continue to need diversity training. And guess what, y'all? It is my hope that one day, there will be no need, nor will there be any issues of diversity, because we as a people under God, indivisible with liberty, will choose justice for all. Recent history shows us that on a global level, this assumption is likes understand likes is obviously false. The auto industry, quick example. For decades, the big three in Detroit were making American cars for American consumers. It should have been a recipe for long-lasting, unlimited success. So why was Japan, starting from scratch after World War II, able to gobble up a significant amount of the market in the United States, selling Toyotas, Hondas, Nissans, and Mazdas? Because they were homogeneous to the foreign country of the United States. But their sales market was able to gobble up a huge part of the auto industry. So that dispels the rumor that only African Americans can sell to other African Americans, that only Hispanics can sell to other Hispanics. That dispels the rumor because they did it. In fact, they're doing it. Some of y'all might drive a Toyota. Do you see my point? In the United States, with consumers that are very unlike themselves, ethnically, culturally, language, and lifestyles, they were able to corner a market in a market that was not homogeneous to what they were normally selling in. The Japanese electronic films have a similar track record, and so do a number of German companies. So how do we account for the past success of Japan and Germany? Each of these, in their own content, who do not value diversity, have been able to be successful. The answer lies in what I believe are faulty assumptions. We hear made about diversity in the United States. A more solid, sound assessment of diversity would acknowledge that yes, indeed, characteristics of race and gender do have something to do with both customers and employees and how they behave. We can't ignore that, and I'm not trying to state that. But race and gender are only the tip of the iceberg. There are many other factors that influence consumer behavior as well as organizational behavior. All the factors that I've listed earlier and many more. We must recognize and acknowledge both invisible diversity as well as visible diversity. And I know y'all wondering what's invisible diversity. Was anybody wondering that, or y'all already know? Okay, I'll tell you. In addition to all the differences between human beings and their cultures, there are also many similarities between groups and between individuals. All people. All people. All people. All people. All people. All people. I mean, really, all people. All people want quality goods and services. Is there anybody that doesn't? We want durability. We want reliability. We want honesty and fairness, good value for our money. We want opportunities to participate, to be included. We want to have our opinions and our feelings acknowledged. Additionally, I would bet, maybe I wouldn't bet, but I would challenge you, that we all want to feel safe in our communities. No one wants to be harassed simply because of the kind of car they drive, the coarseness of their hair, the sag in their swag, the language that I speak, or the music that I listen to, or simply because of the color of my skin. In focusing our diversity discussion only on the visible differences of race and gender, we totally ignore all the things that we have in common. Japan and Germany didn't have to hire a bunch of ethnic diverse people to succeed in the United States market. They simply had to understand human beings and what their potential customers really wanted in goods and services. My hope for diversity, for the diversity movement, and for society in general is that the day will come when we will move beyond the limited categories of race and gender and look at each other as human beings. All lives matter. Yes, they do. But in that, also let us not forget that black lives matter too. We need to develop the skills of listening, empathizing, flexibility, tolerance, patience, compromise, communication, and genuine caring. I said genuine caring. Don't be giving me no fake, you love me stuff. I want the real stuff. Don't give me no fake hug either, because I hate fake hugs. I'm a hugger. I want a real hug. Don't give me that side hug like you really don't want to be hugging me anyway. I want a real hug. If you're going to hug me, don't waste my time. Let's be genuine about what we do. Otherwise, why are we doing it? It's a facade. And cultural diversity needs to break down that facade as much as possible. We need to balance our discussion about differences with a discussion about similarities. It's easy to talk about how we're different. But our challenge is that we are the same. And as you think about ways that you are the same, guess what? You're actually getting to know one another for who they are. And getting to know someone for who they are, really you have the opportunity to love them genuinely because they're not some fake facade of who you thought they were, but you actually know who they are. That makes sense? I think we sometimes make this harder, more difficult than it has to be. So if we balance our discussions of differences with discussions of similarities, if we understand that the desire for quality service and quality projects, equality in how you speak to me and equality in how you treat me is something we all have in common, can we all say respect? Valuing diversity is about suspending judgment, maintaining an attitude of openness and learning, cultivating the ability to listen and understand, and most importantly, perhaps, it's about building bridges, establishing bonds, and growing mutually beneficial and productive relationships with other human beings who are incredibly complex, multifaceted, who may not look like you, act like you, talk like you, or walk like you. They may not even turn up like you. Some of y'all know what that means. I always like to conclude my remarks with this story. At a high school in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I was allowed to address the student body in 2001. Several hundred students attended, and the program, several hundred students attended the program, and the audience was predominantly white. Teen audience at that. So I don't know if y'all have ever spoken in front of a group of teenagers. If they do not like you, you will know it. If not by them saying it, but by their body language. And this day was no different. As I spoke, one young man in the audience showed his distaste for my remarks or for my personality, or perhaps it was both, I don't know. Even if there were other students who seemed to appreciate my presentation, I found myself looking back at him, checking for his approval. I wanted to utter in my own verbal response to his disdain of my remarks that you need to just stop looking at me like that. Because you're making me nervous. Well, this young lad happened to be white. His attitude communicated to me that he wondered why I had been invited to come and speak to them. And as he dissected every word that seemed to come out of my mouth, are you hearing what I'm saying? Are you reading my lips? As he began to dissect all that I was saying to him, in my mind I was like, what is the problem? I couldn't even hardly get through my speech, Leslie, for looking at this dude, wondering if he's talking about me. I mean, really. And so, to this blonde-haired, blue-eyed, jeans-wearing, obviously racially prejudiced, I won't say the rest, I wanted to take him back to one of the projects in Kansas City and introduce him to some stuff. That's where I was at. I finished my remarks to a courteous round of applause from this young audience. And later, as I was walking through the hallway with the principal, she wanted me to meet some of the student leaders. And guess who walked up? That blue-eyed, blonde-haired boy that had seemingly been giving me the evil eye my whole presentation. The young man said, I want to tell you that you were speaking to me. You were the best speaker that we've ever had. This is the first time a guest speaker has been able to keep me awake. I heard every word you said, and I'd like to ask the principal to invite you back for another time. Would that be all right with you? What had happened was I had ran smack dab into racism in what my perception was of this young man. But the racism wasn't on his part. The racism was on mine. Be careful what generalizations you push forth on others, because it could be just like this situation, the exact opposite. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you this morning. And I believe, am I to entertain some questions at this time? I think we have a couple of minutes.
Dare.